So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today to discuss the new notification that came out on April 1st. And of course, this was not April Fool's Day prank being played, but the government was serious about delaying once more and allowing the power plants that have not met with the standards to get even more time to default and possibly pay their way out of it. But to understand the notification and the implications of the notification, we have a really good panel who will explain and unpack for us what has been said, what are the impacts, what are the implications, and what is it as groups that are interested in clean air and a healthy future for all of us, what is it we can do. So we have Sunil Dahiya, who's an analyst with CREA, who will lay the context out for us. And then we have Nivit, who is the program director at CSC, who will speak to us about the implications of this notification and what that's going to mean for the thermal power plants. And of course, we have Ritvik Datta, who needs no introduction, who will unpack for us the legal implications of this. And finally, we have Vishnu, who is yet to join us at this moment, but he will join us soon. He is with the Consumer Action Group Chennai, and he will be talking about whether this opens up space for us to challenge the fact that these thermal power plants are constantly defaulting on the deadlines through the electricity regulatory commissions. So without taking any more of everybody's time, I'd like to pass on to the panelists. There's just one thing I want to check with the panelists. We are recording, so I just want to check that that's okay. And post the presentations, we will have a round of Q&A and then end there. Thank you. Over to you, Sunil.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks, Vinuta. I have shared my screen. Can you all see it?
Yeah, Sunil.
Right. Thanks, Vinuta, for setting this context, and thank you everyone for joining. I know this is the second kind of webinar which we organize on emission standards and what do they mean in terms of public health, in terms of going forward on air quality domain. And without going into a lot of what we have already discussed, I would still want to keep it very general and take us back to what has happened in last 6 years as an overview. I won't go into much details of each and every action and inaction, but obviously there are documentary evidences which are available with us. If anyone of you is interested into knowing more about those, I'll be happy to discuss during the session or even later on.
Conversation. Request everybody to mute if they're not speakers. Thank you.
So just to start with the broader overview, as of February 2021, this is the status of FGD installations or process of FGD installation, where only about 27% of the capacity has awarded the bids. And when I say awarded the bids for FGD installation, that technically means this is the capacity which might be able to install FGDs in coming 2 years, because it takes at least 2 years to install an FGD after the bid being awarded. Now, if we look at this progress by different power plants in terms of installing FGD, we see that central sector, which constitutes NTPC and DVC, most of that capacity, more than 85%, has awarded the bid. So there is some movement in the central sector, and they seems to be moving towards implementing the norm, although the progress is lacking behind in terms of schedule. Whereas both the state sector and private sector are lagging behind, and lagging behind by a lot. State sector, only 8% of the capacity has awarded the bid, and in the private sector it's about 25%, which means most of the capacity in these two sectors is yet to award bid. And if we take the overall capacity, it's more than 61% or 122 gigawatt of capacity, which is yet to award the bids, which technically means that there is no way these power plants could have installed FGD in coming 2 to 3 years. Just for your understanding, the report which CA provides every month in terms of status of FGD installation is very not very easy to understand, and that's why we have created this FGD implementation tracker. Hyperlink of the same is given in the source. You can go and play with data there, look at how different states are. There is some noise in the background.
Hema, can you please
Yeah, thank you. So you can go on this link and look into details of how different states, different unit-wise capacities, different sectors are progressing in terms of LG installation. I won't go into details of it. Now, we know that most of the power plants, more than 61% of the capacity, has not even awarded the bids. Now, why has that happened? There are multiple reasons for it. And in coming few slides, I have put down a timeline or a series of events which has taken place since 2015. Again, I won't read through each and every date and aspect which has been mentioned, but I'll briefly mention few key timelines. The first one was in 2017, on 7 December 2015, the new notification came, and all the power plants were given 2 years to implement the retrofits which was supposed to be done to comply to the notification. Looking at 1 year of progress in terms of what the power plants were doing, what the government was doing, we filed a case at NGT. A petition was filed, which was basically asking the NGT to come up with an appropriate mechanism to ensure the implementation of the norms, because the progress over last 1 year had not been significant, and we anticipated that none of the power plants will be able to comply. Uh, uh, After that, there were lots of discussions happening, and in 2017 September, Ministry of Power came up with a proposal, a new proposal, wherein they were seeking 7 years to implement the norms, which would have ran the timeline till 2024. After which multiple discussions were held between Ministry of Power, Ministry of Environment, Forest, CA, and EPCA, as well as court-appointed amicus curiae, Ritvik Datta, who was also part of the discussion and will be speaking later. After all those discussions,
You're on mute, Sunil.
okay, sorry. So after the discussions among different ministries and departments, the timeline which was proposed for 2024 by Ministry of Power was restricted to 2022. And while restricting this timeline to 2022, around December 2017, Ministry of Environment and Forest and CPCB also said that, looking at the severity of air pollution in Delhi NCR region and looking at the IIT Kanpur study which was done for Delhi NCR, which emphasized that about 58 microgram of PM2.5 can be reduced by controlling the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen emissions from these power plants in Delhi NCR area. The Delhi NCR power plants were given a tighter timeline, which was December 2019. Now, while all these things were happening, the deadline, initial deadline of 7 December 2017 passed, and none of the power plants were able to comply to the timeline. And after the CPCB letters, which were sent on the 11th of December 2017, these power plants all across the country were given a new staggered timeline, which ran till 2022, starting in 2019 for Delhi NCR power plants. Now, although these power plants got new timeline to implement the norms, the power industry and Ministry of Power and CA didn't stop there. While they secured a delay in the implementation, they were also trying to dilute the norms. And in 2018 June, we saw the first dilution in the original notification, which diluted the norms for water consumption for the power plants. After which the NOx norms were again diluted in October 2020, wherein power plants which were installed between 2003 to 2016 were kind of given a relaxed limit to emit NOx levels at 450 milligram instead of 300, which were provided under the initial version of the notification. And while these two dilutions were sought, the Ministry of Power, CA, and most of the power plants were also working towards securing further delays and dilutions. And one of the dilution which they are still working on is diluting the norms for NOx for new power plants which were installed after 2017. And there is a lot going on in terms of pilots, criticizing the pilots, and making sure that those pilots are seen as examples of why NOx norms can't be implemented. So that process is still ongoing, and we are very well aware of two recent proposals, and that's what we are going to discuss today in more detail. One of them was a proposal floated by CEA in December 2020, wherein the proposal said that we don't need to install FGD at all the power plants, and we should install FGD at only those power plants where the sulfur dioxide concentrations are beyond the national ambient air quality standards. And if you go by that logic, most of the power plants in India will not have to install FGD, because sulfur dioxide is a reactive gas. It converts to sulfates within few hours, and that's why we don't see higher concentrations of SO2, and that's why maybe this SO2 is seen as one of the biggest contributor to particulate matter. But if that proposal would have gone ahead, we would have not seen any power plants installing FGD. There was one proposal which came up about in December 2020. But while the proposal for dilution of the norms was floated, there was another proposal which Ministry of Power was working on. And this proposal was seeking a delay in the implementation timeline, again asking time till 2024 to implement the emission norms. Citing multiple reasons which range from COVID-19 pandemic to Atmanirbhar Bharat to liquidity crunch in power sector, and credit refusal due to high stress in the power sector, etc. Now, when this proposal was floated by Ministry of Power as a memorandum, and it was sent to Ministry of Environment and Forest, which kind of asked timeline till 2024. Ministry of Environment and Forest, as Vinita mentioned, on 31st March, this was communicated on 1st of April, came up with another amendment to the notification, according to which most of the power plants in country were given a new timeline. According to that new timeline, now power plants, few categories of the power plants had to install FGD by 2025, and which goes even beyond what was sought or asked by the power sector itself. Now, moving forward, while all these things were happening, we have seen that there were consistent efforts by the Ministry of Power and CA in terms of diluting norms. But why were these bodies coming up with those arguments can be explained by the representations or arguments used by Association for Power Producers over last 6 years, and they have come up with multiple arguments to say that these norms cannot be implemented, they should be diluted, or they should be delayed. And these are some of the arguments used by them, which have been at multiple times been responded by Ministry of Environment itself as well as CPCB, and I said that none of these arguments held ground in terms of a logic to delay or dilute the emission norms. And there was also a petition filed by Association for Power Producers, citing the very same reasons which the Ministry of Environment and Forest on notification says that Atmanirbhar Bharat, COVID-19, and all other issues should be kept into account while coming up with a new timeline. And the Supreme Court rejected that petition and asked the Association for Power Producer to withdraw the petition. Now, when a private body approached a court and they were denied any extension based on those grounds, then these power bodies were managed to discuss it with the government and convince the government to approach their proposal. And now we see that the government's its own wing has come up with these proposals. And once the government wings comes up with these proposals, Supreme Court, not being a technical body, end up listening to them, and we don't know whether there will be a contrary stand taken by Supreme Court, even if it is challenged. And we'll hear more about this when Ritvik speaks. These are some of the letters and communications, as I mentioned, from Association for Power Producers over the last 6 years. You can these are hyperlinked. You can go and check the letters. Now, coming to the current proposal, according to the current proposal, now we have 3 categories of power plants, and these power plants have different timelines by which they have to implement or install the FGDs. And looking at the category of Delhi NCR power plants or power plants associated with Delhi NCR and adjoining areas, these power plants initially had 2017 deadline, then they were given 2019 deadline, and after that very recently, they were also given new timelines which ran till 2022. But according to the new proposal, all these power plants will have a timeline of 2023. So there is at least 6 years delay from the initial notification and at 4-year delay from 2019 notification. Now, Nivit will speak more about what do these extension, these categories mean for all power plants all across the country. But I'll take you through a very small synopsis of a study which we did around Delhi NCR power plants. These were 12 power plants which were taken into consideration in this study, and we tried to look at what will be the air quality, human health, and economic impacts of these power plants. And we identified that there will be at least 2.5 to 5% increase in the pollution level or contribution of coal-based power plants in the overall pollution level around Delhi NCR region if these power plants operate at 55% or 100% power load factors. We also, through that study, identified that when we talk about pollution from power plants, it's not the primary concentration of the gases which are very hazardous. It is the secondary nature of particulate matters being formed from these precursor gases, which is a worrisome concept and issue for us. And about 97, what we found was 97% of the overall incremental pollution in Delhi or Delhi NCR region from the operation of these power plants was contributed only through the secondary particulates, which technically means that even though the concentration of sulfur dioxide are low around the power plants and in the larger geography, but they contribute very significantly to the overall pollution at different locations. Looking at the health impacts through this study, we also identified that if we implement the emission standards, we'll save at least 3.2 million sick leave days. And that's when the power plants are operating at 54% power load factor. If the operation rate increases, then the saving would be much higher. Similarly, in terms of death number, we can avoid at least 3,000 deaths if we implement the emission standards only on these 12 power plants, which ultimately will translate into about a saving of 4,000 crore rupees to the entire region if these emission standards are implemented. And all these numbers are annual numbers. Now, if there is a delay in installing these pollution control equipments at power plants in Delhi NCR region or on these 12 power plants, that will technically mean that a 5-year or a 4-year delay will result into 16,000 crore rupees of economic loss, maybe 12 to 15,000 sick leave days, and about 12 to 13,000 deaths in all across the country. And that's a very figure. Now, that's the last slide, but I would like to summarize that looking at what has happened over last 6 years, the multiple delays and dilutions which have been secured by the power industry, as well as the imposition of fines on these power plants and stays of those fines by Supreme Court, and looking at other two proposals for NOx dilution as well as SOx dilution, which are already underway in these departments, we are aiming towards, or the power sector is aiming towards, literally doing away with the entire notification. They couldn't do it in one go, and that's why they are going step by step and diluting in each and every aspect of the notification, taking us back to where we were in 2015 when these notifications were communicated. And before that, it was only based on EAC's recommendation and pollution levels at a particular at a location where EAC recommended that, okay, if the pollution levels are high, then you need to install FGD, and if it's not, then you don't need to. So slowly we are moving to that same regime where it looks like last 5 years of efforts, exercise, money being spent, public money being spent is a waste, and we didn't need any of these. And that's a really bad approach and a pathway for a country which is grappling with hazardous health impacts and economic challenges to such a big population. And I would like to stop there, and I will be happy to take any clarifications, questions, or discussion. Over to you, Vinuta and David.
Thanks so much, Sunil. You tried to cram everything into that, gave us a lot of information. Thank you so much for that. We will do the questions later. So we will move on now to Nivit. Nivit, over to you.
Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Before I start, I would like to inform that I would be leaving by 3:30. So sorry for the same. Sunil has already given a brief synopsis what this new notification is about. What the new notification has done, it has divided all the thermal power plant in the country into 3 categories. Just 1 minute. All the thermal power plants were divided into 3 categories. They were given a certain timeline to meet the compliance. And if they don't meet the compliance, there is also a second table in the notification which talks about environmental compensation, the fine which they will pay on yearly basis from the time the non-compliance start. Now, let's do a little bit critical analysis. Categorization. I personally believe by categorizing into 3 categories, what MoEFCC has tried to do is to delay the implementation. Earlier, all the thermal power plant was supposed to meet the standard by 2022. All the 205 gigawatt has to meet the standard by 2022. But what is happening now? Something around 80 to 100 gigawatt have to meet the standard by 2022 and 23, and rest something about 90 to 130 gigawatt, which falls in the category C. They have to meet the standard by 2024 and 2025. In a nutshell, we can say MoEFCC have given this 50% of the coal power capacity to continue pollute for another 2 to 3 years. So that is the sad part. Now, who is going to get benefited by this notification? If you look at this chart, it's the state and the private entrepreneurs. State GenCos have already not done anything. Private have shown little bit initiative. If anything has happened on the ground, the major part is played by the central plants like NTPC. I will not say NTPC is 100% complying, but at least they are leading the group. When we talk about the categorization, the first category is of category A, which has plants in Delhi NCR and with million plus population within 10 kilometers. Earlier, the study of MoEFCC and CPCB said plants in 300 kilometer radius of Delhi NCR contribute to air pollution in Delhi. There are 11 plants around Delhi NCR, 5 are in Haryana, 4 are in Punjab, and 2 in Uttar Pradesh. And as Sunil said, they were given a deadline of 2019. But now what the new notification have said, out of this 11 plant, now 5 have to meet the norms by 2022. And the rest 6, 4 are from Punjab and 2 are from Haryana, have to meet either by 2024 and 2025. Here, let's try to understand the efforts which have been put during last 2 to 3 decades to clean the Delhi's hair have gone into vain. Thermal power plant in Delhi NCR has been given license to continue to pollute, and that is the sad part of this new notification. Weak deterrence and poor penalty regime. EPCA have been, the then EPCA have worked with the Ministry of Power and CA to come out with certain deterrence mechanisms. Now this notification has deterrence system. But let's see how they have divided the penalty. The plant which has to meet the notification standard by 2022 have to pay the highest. That is like 10 to 20 paisa per unit. And the plants which have been given 3 to 4 year extension, 4 to 5 year extension, I mean the plant which are falling in category, have to pay a very small fees, something around 5 to 10 paisa per unit. Now, I could not find any rationale behind it. Frankly speaking, the more you delay, the more you pay. And this penalty should increase year by. But there is nothing like that. Plant load factor, PLF, it's the escape route. The penalty, the environmental compensation is being charged on unit of electricity produced. So if plant is operating at low PLF, it means they have to pay less penalty if non-compliant. Take example of older thermal power plant. Take example of inefficient plant. Take example of plant operating during the peak load. They are operating at very low PLF. So why the hell they will go for a huge investment of 100 crore, 200 crore, 300 crore? They will run at lower penalty. Sorry, they will run at lower PLF and pay low penalty. Look at this chart. Here I want to say category C. If they operate at 60% PLF, then they have to pay 26 crore per annum. And for a 500 megawatt plant, to meet the compliance, they have to spend something around 200 to 250 crores rupees. It means you can continue to pollute for another 10 years just by paying 26 crore per annum. Now, again, very difficult to understand the logic of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Again, the next important point is cheaper to non-compliant. And this is the problem like Center for Science and Environment have been advocating. The cost of non-compliance in India is cheaper than cost of compliance. And this table will show that. A thermal power plant gets a fixed charge from DISCOMs every year, even if they are not operating. And now that fixed charge runs around 200 to 250 crores. And if you look at the penalty, it is something around 15 to 20 crore. If you look at the cost of compliance, it means putting pollution control equipment. It is around 10 to 15 times than the cost of non-compliance. So what a power plant is going to do? They will say, it is easier, it is simpler for me to pay the penalty rather than go for installing pollution control equipments. Retirement, old plant given license to kill. The new amendment highly favors operation of old plant indefinitely. A new category of retiring plant have been created without specifying which are these plants. Now there will be a committee of CPCB and other, and they will work out and come out with a list. Older plant planning to retire by 2022 and 2025 have been exempted from meeting the norms by simply submitting an undertaking to CPCB and CA for exemption on ground. And they can continue to operate post 2025 by merely paying an environmental compensation post 2025 deadline. Now, I will simply say, I will simply ask, what if a plant is planning to retire by 2035? They will say, I will retire in 2025. And then can continue to operate till 2025 and later on just by paying a small penalty. And here we are talking about old plants. The old plant will not be retiring by 2035, I'm sorry. They will be retiring by 2025 or 2030. So everybody will say, I will retire by 2025 and can continue for another 5 to 10 years polluting the environment and defeating the whole purpose of objective of climate change. Look at this table. Old power plant have to pay a penalty of 20 paisa a unit. Old plants are smaller in capacity, so a 250 megawatt plant, which needs to retire in 2022, have to pay around 18 crore per year at 40% PLF and 30 crore at 30% PLF. So what older plant are going to do? They will say, I am going to pay penalty rather than spending money on retrofitting. Now this low penalty will encourage plants which are scheduled to retire in a few years to actually pay the penalty and pollute the environment and cause health hazard. Again, I want to reiterate here that plant which says I am retiring by 2022 or 2025, they don't have to install pollution control equipment, and they can continue to operate post 2022 or 2025 by paying a penalty and also by not installing pollution control equipment. Now, at the end, I simply want to say, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Ministry of Power and CEA have given license to all the thermal power plant to pollute. And this is really very sad. Before the beginning of this webinar, I just went through the CEA and MOP website just to find out what is the objective of their creation. There I could not find any word like environment. At the most, they were talking about energy efficiency. Environment is in the objective of Ministry of MOEFCC, but unfortunately, under the tremendous pressure of Ministry of Power and CEA, MOEFCC have ruined all the good work which had started in 2025. The new amendment is a license to pollute indefinitely with a small fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nivit. I realize you're leaving at 3:30, but if we'll first go to Ritvik, and then if there are any questions specifically to you, we'll come before we open up for more questions and before Vishnu speaks. Ritvik, over to you.
Thanks, Vinuta. After this powerful presentation by Nivit, I'll not try to get into either figures or the reality that is there. Sunil has already presented on what was the history of the litigation that happened, and Nivit has very clearly said what is so stark and so shocking about it. I'll just highlight few important points here, and this may be duplication, so pardon me for this. But I think the first important part is the confidence that the power companies have that whether it is 17, whether it is 22, whether it is 25, it's not to be followed at all. That's the confidence they have. And that is why they repeatedly come back to court with extension, knowing that, well, if we get an extension from court, well and good. If it doesn't mean extension from court, we can still go and get a notification issued. So first and foremost, the fact that it is not a 22 deadline which has been breached, it is the 17 deadline that has been breached, right? And they are in a slumber which started in 15th and continues till date. And it is also very unfortunate, as rightly said, that the issue is, I think, very correctly pointed out, it's 10 paisa, 20 paisa. It is about 10 paisa, 20 paisa, but I think very, very importantly, the issue is that, is there any right under the provisions of the Environment Protection Act to actually condone a violation by the mode of payment of a fine? You see, when even earlier, when we are giving this kind of exemption saying 1% of the cess, 1% of the ex-showroom cost, the Environment Protection Act says very clearly, if you violate it, there is a provision of a complaint case before a judicial magistrate that may lead to either imprisonment or fine or both. Now, therefore, this idea that you pay 20% paisa or 40 paisa or 80 paisa, whatever is the amount, is basically, as rightly saying, it is a license to violate. Because and even more important, it is not a license, it legitimizes the violation by saying as long as you pay, you have the right to pollute. So there is nothing which actually creates any fear in anyone to actually comply. The next important point is, I think, where do this get this entire idea of creating divisions as category A, B, C, D, whatever it is. You see, whether it is polluted or not, if it has to comply, it has to comply. Now, I think one of the problems, and as I was also in court as an amicus in the matter, and I think we are all guilty of one thing, that is where I think the Supreme Court, first of all, allowed for the leeway way back in 17 by accepting CPCB's application for extension of timeline. That's the number one problem that happened. The second was to say, well, those which are in critically polluted area and with a population of 1 million, right, they will be complying with the norms. Now, this critically polluted area concept is that, what happens if an area is severely polluted? Will you allow the power companies to violate the law till they become critically polluted? Once they become critically polluted, then you go back and wait for them to be severely polluted. So there is a serious issue with regard to this particular categorization that they've done. And I think importantly also is the fact that how could the state or the Ministry of Environment actually extend the deadline based on a request from the Ministry of Power without even approaching the Supreme Court? You see, this is an undertaking that they have given. All the private companies have given an undertaking that they will comply with the norms. The Supreme Court went to the Ministry of Environment went to the Supreme Court asking for an extension of the timeline. So now, earlier in 2017, now when the timeline is over and when undertaking has been given, where do they get this ground for extension? And it's also very interesting to see what the ground they have given. When Ministry of Power writes to the Ministry of Environment, it's a very interesting letter. They issue it not as a letter, but it seems like it is a direction given. It is titled as Office Memorandum. It's titled as Office Memorandum. And it is not a letter by a violator or, asking for the law, for some, leeway by the law enforcer. It is virtually a direction by the Ministry of Power saying that in view of the following reasons, and if you read the reasons, it's very interesting. They say in view of Atmanirbhar Bharat, in view of COVID, in view of self-reliance, in view of Make in India, etc. So whatever reason that will come in future, that is also now a reason for them not to follow. So I have never found etc. as a reason to actually get a bail, saying I want bail because of etc. reason. So they've got full ... here, fill it up, but give it to us. And we have an ever willing Ministry of Environment, which is always ready. They've abolished EPCA for whatever reasons that are there, which I personally support. But leaving that aside, they have created a committee. What is their interest today? Today, there is not a single body to enforce compliance in the NCR region. The Commission on Air Quality Management, the term expired. They have re-promulgated an ordinance, which itself is an illegal act. Re-promulgation of an ordinance is a fraud on the Constitution as held by the Supreme Court in Krishna Kumar's case. It's a fraud. A 7-judge bench held it. So that again is illegal. So we have today, just to conclude, I think a law, a notification that is completely illegal, mala fide, and And while it's, as rightly said, it is not pay and pollute, it is pollute and pay, right? As long as you pollute, as long as you operate, you have it. And this fixation with money is itself illegal, because it undermines the rule of law and is completely contrary to the provisions of the Environment Protection Act. I don't think so this particular notification should be allowed to stand at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ritvik. That was quite an eye-opener on many counts times. So, Vishnu, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So, okay, so let me share my screen. Is it okay?
Yes, it's visible, Vishnu.
Okay. So I think I'm taking. Okay. Oh yeah. So the thing, so the it's like it's more like a thought piece than the more action-oriented work that Ritvik and others are doing. But it's something that kind of resonates with the previous what was asked. So what I'm trying to do is, two different areas of work. One is the energy, which is I put in bracket as electricity. And the other part of the environment bit, which kind of is exactly what the answer given to the Ministry of Power. That is like a consumer has to bear. So this kind of approach is that people with the environment side are kind of unable to kind of grasp the intricacies of that particular conversation. So in this particular scenario, like FGD for me is actually very interesting. It kind of brings together this energy and environment, that nexus that has always been kind of different areas of institutions, different areas of work, different areas of focus. For example, if you see electricity, for that matter, you see Ministry of Power, state governments, GenCos, Transcos, DISCOM, CERC, SCRC, APTEL, and CEA. So the whole range of institutions that come are completely different. The Electricity Act 2003 mandates this sector, and National Electricity Policy, National Tariff Policy, central and state regulations. These are all things that kind of emanate from the Electricity Act and are part of the various regulatory passed through the various regulatory and central regulations in the state. So what are the key documents that kind of dictate the electricity sector? One is a tariff order, the power purchase agreement, the competitive bidding. There are supply code, grid code, and those kind of things. But what differentiates from the environment side is the catchwords that I like to call it as catchwords, which is affordable, reliable, 24/7, efficiency, quality of supply. But within the regulatory space or within the MOP space, these are all the operational terms that they talk about: revenue, return on equity, working capital, profit and loss, etc. So if you really see this, the vocabulary is different. The way they look at the sector is different. How they manage and promote the sector is completely different. On the environment side, you've got MOFCC, and Environment Department, State Central Pollution Control Boards, EIA, CIA, EIA, NGT. You got Environment Protection Act, Water Act, Air Act. I think the people in the audience know most of the things. But the catchwords, again, the EIA report, Environment Clearance CT, or the catchwords that kind of are part of this thing as the environmental protection, hazards, damage, restoration, compensation, pollution. So operational terms that we usually come across in the sector is NOx, SOx, those CO2, etc. But these two fields are kind of desperate, have remained separated for a very long time. One is you got a power plant which will generate 1 million units per year to gain 1,000 crore revenue. Year on year, subject to regulatory scrutiny and approval. So it could be like the State Electricity Regulatory Commission is within the setup, or the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is mandated to pass the cost on to the consumers. Then those are the sectors that is the way the sector operates. While environmental norms are dictated by a different set of numbers and unquantifiable environmental costs. So even though your 1,000 crore revenue, exactly like the I think Nivit had said in his presentation that it could be they earn 1,000 crore revenue, but at the same time for them to pay a fine through restoration is something that is not much of a like this thing. So, but at this point of time, for me, what I found interesting at this point of time, the flue gas desulfurization, story started 2015. The parameters on sulfur dioxide, nitrogen, mercury were all kind of put in focus. Then the idea is to have by 2022, 414 units across the country to have FGDs. Technology in wake the flue gas desulfurization. It's actually a process to remove flue gas and other slurry using limestone, etc. So, but this is actually a technology. This has got a cost to it. For example, the actual cost that an FGD unit, if it is to be put in a power plant, will cost around 42 lakhs per megawatt, at least from the Sasan power plant. So according to the CERC order of 2020, that's the amount. So we are talking about, for Sasan, you are talking about 2,400 crores of FGD of the unit that is we put. That's the capex. Then operating expenditure, to run the FGD unit, you need some cost, right? So you've got a capital expenditure cost of to the O&M expenditure of 2% to the capital cost. So that is, you've got 2,400 crores for Sasan. Out of that, 2% per year is set aside just to maintain the unit. And there's an opportunity cost. I think this is a point that Nandi had raised. So what the regulatory commission or everybody looks at is the opportunity cost. That is the loss of generation as a result of setting up this plant. You have to shut down a unit to set up this plant. So what is the loss? That is the opportunity, and how can this cost be determined? So still now there has not been any clarity in the regulatory sphere on how to do it, because it's a new approach to doing things. They are also trying to figure out. According to CEA, for the particular Sasan unit, the fixed cost is around 17 paisa per kilowatt hour, and level A variable cost is around 7 paisa. So it's around 24 paisa per unit is the cost for Sasan if they put their FGD unit. So then, okay, I'm just giving an example of how much it costs. Then this is the position with regard to setting up an FGD unit in any power plant. CA has got a base cost of 37 lakhs to 42 lakhs. So somewhere in that range is it. So almost all fall in that range. So this is what I think Ministry of Power recognized the MOEF notification and said that is a change in law. Then CERC, which is Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, basically looks at interstate tariffs. Supposing Sasan or Mundra is supplying power to Rajasthan or Gujarat and Maharashtra, for example, those power plants will be regulated by the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. So then, because there is no such there's no historical reference point of what FGD costs and how much it is. So the Central Electricity Regulatory Authority has been made the person to scrutinize the cost. They will give a base cost based on that this particular cost has to be kind of they will use that as a benchmark cost. So then, most importantly, as the question came from the utility, the idea is then it is a pass-through. Pass-through cost is nothing but the cost that whatever is FGD capital cost and the operating expenditure for the time period it is passed on to the consumer. That is where the whole system of pass-through cost and why it becomes a burden on the consumer is something that is kind of debated with the regulatory commission, the state regulatory commission, etc. So right now, CERC just now in April 12, they passed a draft order where they have propounded two principles around it. One is the principle of economic restitution. Since it is a change in law, the party that is setting up the FGD should not be burdened by it. That's the one thing. Secondly, the carrying cost. The person who is setting up the FGD and the time period between occurrence of change in law event to the actual payment. So the thing is, there could be a time lag between the time that they put the FGD to the time that they actually receive payment. There should not be any kind of a loss of revenue. So this is the way the CERC's principle kind of worked around it. So has worked around it. So I think people are free to give, when you go to the CERC website, I will also give the link. People are free to comment on it. I think for 25 days or 30 days it's open. And CERC has also said this particular FGD recovery of the FGD costs a 25-year payback period on investment made in FGD. So this is the way it is set up from the CERC side. So CERC, as I said, is an interstate regulator who is kind of looking at to a power plant that is supplying power to 2 or 3 states. That's the thing. So, but what is happening at the state level? State level, you have state electricity regulators. So, the minute these power plants got this notification, they rush to the state regulators. But the idea is, since if it is a pass-through, then the consumer will be burdened. So SERCs in their own wisdom has said they did not have an appetite for tariff increase at the state level. But what they did that was positive for me when I actually read it was, they started scrutinizing the electricity compliance, EIA reports, the environment certificates, compliance, emissions, etc., and started telling the generators, you guys have complied to some extent. This data is wrong. You should be coming back with better information for us to think about allowing such cost to be part of your this ruling for that matter. Then what happened was then there is pushback by the regulator saying, see, our own tariff regulation does not permit you to set up FGD units, so don't come to us, and they dismissed the case right away. People like Maharashtra Electricity Commission, in fact, said, don't come to us for approval for cost. You go to the government, get a grant, or go to the market, or who are equity, or who somebody's got to give you capital subsidies, take it and come. So this kind of played out in several regulatory spheres: Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, I think, and Rajasthan Regulatory Commission. So then APTEL came in November 2020 and has put this.
Vishnu, acronyms may not necessarily be known by everyone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. So APTEL is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did the screen just? Okay. Sorry. So in I think that I kind of.
Sorry, I broke your flow.
Okay. So the electricity structure, the regulatory structure is such that state. I've told you about the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, which is doing the interstate tariffs and regulation of interstate power. While at the state level, you got state electricity regulatory commissions like Tamil Nadu Electricity Regulatory Commission, Karnataka. Each state has its own regulatory commission. Any order that is passed by the regulator, which is against the which the petitioner does not find it to be this thing, they can appeal again with the appellate tribunal for electricity. So in this Lalitpur case, which is a thermal power plant of 1,980 megawatts, the UPERC, the Uttar Pradesh Electricity Regulatory Commission, has basically dismissed their claim for the FGD. So because of the very fact that the tariff regulation do not permit such cost. So APTEL stepped in and said, no, this is really a change in law. All regulators from now onwards must use, must, must take this into account and give pass through. So as of 2020 November, the road is clear for all generating companies to approach the regulatory commissions for FGD installation, for the cost of FGD installation. So then in January 2021, they went back to UPERC, Uttar Pradesh Electricity Regulatory Commission, and got in principle approval. So again, as I told you, that the whole system of this cost, cost of the FGDs is not known by the regulator. So they're always playing cautious. So what they try to do nowadays, they give in principle approval to the cost that is provided for capex, capital expenditure. But for the operating expenditure, they say that is the base cost. You go and do competitive bidding and then come back to us. In fact, Lalitpur got only one bid out of the out of the international bidding that they did. So that is the only one bid. With that one bid, they came with and this 42 lakhs was basically the CEA also has scrutinized it and said this should be approved. So in principle, they have allowed 42 lakhs for capex. And an operating expenditure which is subject to competitive bidding. The idea is that the regulator says, I don't know what your operating expenditure for an FGD is. You set up everything, then you come back to me for an operating expenditure, file a petition for me for operating expenditure. I will scrutinize that and then give it to you. So that is the way it is kind of playing out. Now I think we will find more applications before the regulatory commission on these FGDs. So I'm not disputing anything that's there. I'm only giving you a set of facts that as it is. So yeah, essentially an FGD, capex package looks like this. It has got a base cost. That is like,
Vishnu, I think this may be, that may be too much.
I understood.
Okay.
So what has happened now is, what has this whole FGD story achieved? I find it even more positive in the sense, state electricity regulatory commissions, it's like a question of forum shopping. You've got a forum that is the MOEF and all that, which refuses or kind of waters down or dilutes. But the regulatory commission are more or less on the basis of revenue, cost, etc. And they are talking about environmental standards and emissions because the FGD has a cost, and environmental standards are the necessary outcome of such costs. Unlike a generating plant you're setting up per unit, you're raising and you're getting 1,000 crore revenue. This is a very normative and standard cost. Standardized environmental standards are made the basis of such outcomes. So there's a deeper scrutiny of EIA reports, environmental clearance, environment statements. There are linkages between the EIA report and cost because the regulator is now looking at that EIA report where environmental mitigation measures are being made in terms of the green cover, etc., and saying if you put 550 crores for this particular thing, though I see that there is no FGD being mentioned. If it is mentioned, then I won't allow this cost to this thing, and that kind of a discussion is ongoing. So DISCOMs, who are very politically, political creatures rather than utilities, they are aghast at the very fact that consumers need to bear 24 paisa extra for such costs. There's a pushback from that side to understand, and there's also investigation of possible gold plating of costs. So Sasan says 2,400. By the end of the day, when they actually go for the competitive bidding, they could be like 2,000 or even 1,500. We don't know. So since the process is started. Then I think Nivit had already pointed out of the 20 paisa per unit generated. Again, I find that an interesting story because you've got now the MOEF has put the environmental cost for pollution in their thing. So cost of violation.
Yeah.
So that is, I'm finishing it.
Okay, so, because I just want Ashok. Ashok is leaving at 3:45. I just want him to come in before he's.
Okay, I'm just doing 2 minutes. So the thing is, I've got this. So the thing, what I'm trying to advocate here is that you've got electricity institutions on one side with a set of documents and contracts, etc. You've got environment with a set of documents. This is kind of the right time to get both in the same documents, so to speak. You can have the PPA should be a composite PPA with an FGD with all the environmental norms as part of the PPA. So PPA, power purchase agreement, right now only looks at cost, generation cost and tariffs. So anything that PPA does not talk about environmental standards. So FGD is a starting point for me to bring these environmental standards to be incorporated as part of the power purchase agreements and conditions. So tariff orders. So if you see the tariff order, it's a very lengthy document, but there are several ways, several things that go into the capex, opex, working capital, return on equity, interest on debt. A lot of these things are captured, but everything is from a financial perspective. FGD kind of gives us a story to incorporate environmental standards in tariff orders, or any order for generation company asking for generating company coming to the regulator for approval of a generation tariff. So the regulator, so the format of all these documents can be strengthened and created in the manner in which that there's a deeper integration between the way energy and environment is then now will possibly be looked at. Then again, the case is competitive bidding.
Vishnu, I think, yeah. We'll come back, Vishnu. I just want to make sure Ashok is able to input before we go, and especially on the sort of debate that's happening on the chat, which is, isn't it simple enough to make the polluter pay? And shouldn't it be a simple argument that thermal power plants are polluting, they have to pay this? Why is it so complex? Ashok, I'm sure you'll have other points to make as well, but if you can come in on that. Thanks. And Vishnu, we'll come back to you the moment.
Absolutely, no issues.
Yeah, thanks, Sunita, and sorry, Vishnu, for butting in. I need to leave in 5 minutes, so sorry for that. And Vinita, thanks for putting me in a nice spot. I definitely don't think I have answers to all the very complicated questions that are being asked in the chat box, but I'll try to do my best to talk about whatever few things I understand. Firstly, I think I just want to point out that unfortunately, unlike while one wishes that it was a fairly straightforward, simple argument to relate pollution to costs, unfortunately it is not, for various reasons, which I think the power system is a very complex system. I don't want to go into all the details now. We don't have the time for that. I wish that we had better environmental governance and better legal systems, which would make this easier. It definitely should be better and easier than what it is. But at the same time, I don't want to oversimplify what this whole changing a power system to be less polluting is either. So, but anyway, I think getting on to the more specific issues regarding this particular notification of MOEFCC, I just wanted to highlight a few points which, in order to add to all the various dimensions that I think Sunil, Ritvik, Nivit, Vishnu and all have pointed out. Firstly, one thing just to kind of slightly tweak what Sunil was saying, it is not that power plants have to go to regulate the kind of cases that he talked about, Lalitpur and so on and so forth. It is not about power plants going to state regulators asking for approval of costs, but it is going to them for in principle approval of costs, which is a very different thing. Saying that because of this new law, I have to put in money for this. So you please tell me that after I put in the money for this, you will actually approve the costs, so that then I can take that paper from you and go to a bank or somebody and say that please give me a loan so that I can install this. And that in principle is what there was a whole lot of back and forth about. And as Vishnu explained, APTEL finally said you need to give it. And I think different regulatory commissions have started giving in principle approvals. So there's the quick summary of that is that I think there's a whole lot of, shall we say, lack of clarity on the electricity regulatory side about how to go about dealing with this request for new investments and so on. And taking one step back, I think just to clarify to everybody, if you are installing pollution control equipment in order to meet environmental norms or any new norms set up in mandated by the government, those costs will be passed through to consumers. So that is part of the legal framework that currently governs our system. We can debate about whether we need that or whether that can be improved, but currently that's the system that governs it. Very quickly, just a few points about what I could understand or not understand from the MOEFCC notification. I think some people have already touched upon the uncertainty around the very definition of retired plants and what that means. I think that's a very important aspect. And until there is clarity about that, it's very hard to say what impact that is going to have. Other things which are not clear at all from the MOEFCC notification, for example, is while we all just discussed that the costs of installing a pollution control equipment can be passed on to consumers. Actually, the really difficult question the really important question to understand is, can this penalty be passed on to consumers? If this penalty can be passed on to consumers, essentially then there's really nothing that a plant has to do. They can continue to, all it will mean is all our power electricity bills will go up and pollution will continue to be what it is. So, and right now there is not enough legal or regulatory clarity on the electricity side as to whether these penalties can be passed through or not. So it will have to be, I guess, fought out on a state-by-state, forum-by-forum basis, or at least get some interesting, good precedents to ensure in some states, at least by consumer groups, to ensure that this penalty at least is not passed through. I think if this penalty is passed through, then this notification is practically meaningless. The second thing that is not clear to me is that, again, it's a very technical thing, but I'll very quickly try to run through it, is there is something called as a merit order stack, by which it is decided as to if your state has 10 different power plants, and at some point of time you need to supply power of some quantity. Which power plants are you going to run, and for how much quantity are you going to get power from them? That is decided by something called as a merit order stack. And the merit order stack, basically it's a priority ordering of power plants depending on what is called as your variable cost of generation. So the second question to ask is, does this penalty that is being imposed, does it affect the merit order stack or not? Essentially, it should at least make sure that I go down in the merit order stack so that I generate less than what I would have done if I did not pay the penalty. So again, there is lack of clarity on this. We need to see how this is going to play out as far as the merit order stack is concerned. Yeah, and then of course, I think other people have pointed out all these issues about this multiple categorization and the impact of this categorization on different parts of the countries, and whether these penalties are sufficient to actually incentivize installation or adherence to the norms. I think definitely a very valid question, and one needs to understand and analyze this a little more carefully to see whether this will happen at all. I think I'll stop there. I hope that was useful. Vinita, back to you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ashok. I think what is becoming somewhat clear is that, for this community that's sort of on this call worried about air pollution and the implications of various sources of air pollution, maybe there is a bit of a primer sort of on the power side that would help. Certainly not in the time we have now, but we could possibly arrange another conversation on the power side and how we can actually think about the air pollution, but also understand the way the power sector works.
Yeah,
so
we'll be happy to try and help to the extent we can.
Okay, thanks so much, Ashok.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, Vishnu, I just wanted to actually, before we continue with this, because it's at a certain level of complexity, I was wondering if you could actually talk about, from a consumer perspective, as consumers of electricity, and consumers don't often get involved with the whole process of asking the ERCs to act on environmental concerns. So is there a message you have for us as consumers, and what we can do as consumers in terms of this notification, as well as sort of at least following up on what Ashok said, that making sure that these notifications are actually implemented and the power companies don't get away with the ERC?
Yeah, I think it depends on the immediately the point that I kind of depends on the category of consumer. So you've got a complex.
I think
system of
largely in this audience, you have residential consumers.
residential
Don't have, yeah.
Yeah, I think what we need to kind of be clear is that in the what we need to probably recognize is that you know uh, the if consumers need power at least from renewables or friendly environmentally friendly sources, uh, I think there should be a way in which they should be communicated. So for example, we've just finished a project on the electricity bill, how to make your electricity bill better. If I could have certain information with me to understand, let's say that I'm getting my power plant from the Metur thermal power plant in Tamil Nadu, which is probably a polluting source of power. Would I then be in a position to write to rather than the environmental department, I can write to the electricity regulatory commission and tell them, see, this power plant is an inefficient power plant, which is not, kind of functioning in the manner that I see to be fit. Look, have you ever looked at or investigated if the power plant has, like if you see the tariff order, they'll say that the boilers are not properly maintained, or the very fact that if there's a electrostatic precipitator, they will say it's broken down. They are all very transparent in the tariff order, by the way, and they will kind of, those are action points that I would think are kind of we can scrutinize. In some sense, it's a matter of getting that information for us to make the choice. So if you are in Karnataka, you could, and if you could file a set of RTAs to find out what is the where are they purchasing power, what are thermal power plants, and to understand tell the regulatory commission this is a costly power plant or this is a power plant that is not environmentally friendly. So I think in one thing that I've noticed, the regulatory commissions are more open and more it's a quasi-judicial body, right? We have the way to kind of interact with them in a different manner because the Electricity Act allows public participation.
Right.
A lot more than because in the participatory space in the EIA process or not, but in the Electricity Regulatory Commission space, you have the right to tell the regulators which you would have not otherwise done in the environmental space.
Okay, thanks, Vishnu. I'm unfortunately going to have to also take this forward, this conversation forward when we get a little deeper into what we can do within the power sector space. But I think what this is forcing us to recognize is that we have to go beyond just the electricity space. We have to start engaging with the power sector more actively, because it's not merely the environmental norms, but we have to start pushing back even within the power sector spaces.